We have just read one of the most difficult and emotionally painful stories in our text, the binding of Isaac. God has asked Abraham to offer his child as a sacrifice. We then hear nothing from Abraham. The narrative continues, saying that he woke up early and took his son and 2 servants on a trip. After 3 days, he sees the mountain God has told him about and goes up with Isaac. The only words Abraham says to his son are in response to Isaac questioning where the lamb is for the offering. Abraham responds that God will provide, and they walk on together. If you have ever struggled with this reading, please raise your hand. If you have ever been angry at this reading, please raise your hand. If you have ever questioned what on earth Judaism is all about, if this story is what God wants, please raise your hand. Why on earth do we read this today? Each year we enter Rosh Hashanah as a celebration, the birthday of the world, the new year. Tomorrow we'll read from the story of creation, which seems very appropriate for the holiday. But today we are asked to dive into the deep and difficult questions humans must confront. One understanding of why we read this passage today. It is easy for us to forget that Rosh Hashanah requires us to examine ourselves and enter into judgment. The binding of Isaac is a stark reminder that all human beings are complicated, even perhaps especially our biblical heroes. And each year we come and try to understand why God would ask such a thing and why Abraham would silently fulfill this commandment. We argue whether Abraham passed the test or failed it. I myself have made both arguments, depending on the year. And each year I speak with congregants questioning this story, who read the Torah and we walk away troubled. But as I said last night, Judaism is not a Torah religion. It is a Talmud one. The Talmud, traditionally called the Oral Torah, is held in the same esteem as the later books of Tanakh. While the 5 books of Moses hold a particular level of godliness, perhaps because they are mythologically written directly on top of Mount Sinai, the message in the naming is clear. Do not suppose that the Oral Torah is not a divine book of godly wisdom. It is just as necessary and revelatory as the book of Job or Isaiah. The traditional method of understanding Judaism and our layers of texts, which sometimes we call exegesis, began long ago and continues to be a core foundation of our tradition. Our shorthand is called Pardes. The term has a double meaning. In Chagiga 14, a tractate of Talmud, we read about 4 rabbis whose souls entered the heavenly garden, the Pardes. Rabbi Akiva, the most renowned of them all, warned the others, when we arrive, we will be met by pure marble stone. Do not say, water, water, for who says a falsehood would not be established before God. So this is a super weird sentence on first glance. Where's the water? What are you talking about? Why would they even say such a thing? Why would Rabbi Akiva think to warn them? This is the only thing that he says before they go up to this Pardes. The rabbis explain that the marble is so pure, it looks like a reflection, perhaps moving slightly as the viewer's head moves. One might look, and not used to such a pure and unblemished marble, they might think that they had arrived in the middle of an ocean, surrounded by whitish, bluish water all around them, and out of fear, startle, and shout, we are surrounded by water, water, and we are about to drown. While this wouldn't be a lie, it would be a falsehood. The fearful person would truly believe that they are in great peril. They are not lying at all, but they are indeed mistaken because they've only been able to see the surface, the first warning their eyes gave them. It is from this story that the rabbis derived the idea of Pardes. Again, the word itself means garden, but Pardes now is being used as an acronym. P for pshat, the simple or surface meaning of our text. Resh for remez, the hint where we notice textual strangeness that points towards different meanings. D for drash, the homiletical interpretation focusing on morals and laws, which we normally find in Midrash, hence the name. And finally, S for sod, the secret meaning, the esoteric and mystical interpretation. All 4 readings exist simultaneously. The story as we have read it is the Peshat level. Right? It's the simple linear story as we get from the Torah text itself. It's a story where our presumed hero says nothing in defense of his child and seems to exhibit blind faith and obedience. It feels deeply un-Jewish. But I want to read the story as we find it in the Midrash. This retelling is from the collection of Midrash called The Legends of the Jews, translated into German by Louis Ginsberg and then into English by Henrietta Zold, his assistant and founder of Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. And this is what it says. And the Lord thought to try Abraham and Isaac in this matter. And God said to Abraham, "Take now your son." Abraham responds, "I have two sons, and I don't know which one of them you want me to take." Remember, he has Isaac and Ishmael. God says, "Your only son." And Abraham says, one is the only son of his mother, and the other is the only son of his mother. Still not clear on who you're asking for. God said, "Whom you love." Abraham says, "I love them both." God says, "Isaac." Isaac. Abraham continues, "Where are we going?" God says, "To the land I'll show you, and you'll offer Isaac there for a burnt offering." Abraham says, "Am I fit to perform the sacrifice? I'm not a priest. Maybe I should take him to the high priest Shem to do this." God says, "When you arrive at that place, I will make you into a priest." We skip down the Midrash to Abraham and Isaac's conversation. Again, what we have read as a very short conversation between the two of them. And while they were walking along, Isaac spoke unto his father, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering before God?" Abraham answered Isaac, saying, "The Lord has chosen you, my son, for a perfect burnt offering instead of the lamb." And Isaac said unto his father, "I will do all that the Lord has spoken to you with joy and cheerfulness in my heart." And Abraham again said unto Isaac his son, "Is there anything in your heart, any thought or counsel concerning this which is not proper? Tell me, my son, I pray you. My son, conceal it not from me." And Isaac answered, "As the Lord lives and as my soul lives, there is nothing in my heart to cause me to deviate either to the right or the left from the word that he has spoken unto you. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred on account of this, nor is there in my heart any thought of evil counsel concerning this. But I am joyful and cheerful of heart in this matter, and I say, Blessed is the Lord, who has this day chosen me to be a burnt offering for him." Contrary to the story that we read in Genesis, Abraham is full of questions and turmoil. He is not silent. He does not blindly follow an instruction from God. And by the way, Isaac is not a small child being manipulated onto the altar, but a grown man somewhere in his 30s who joyfully accepts this instruction when his father tells him exactly what's going on. How is it possible for the Pshat surface text to seem so clear and troubling, and yet the Midrash seems to be completely in opposition to those words? Now, the Midrash is picking up on hints, remez, the second level of our structure, that asks us to notice details that seem strange or superfluous, because we're taught that the Torah never uses more words than necessary. Remember, it's all handwritten, and to question and search for multiple meanings. The first part of our Midrash picks up on the multiple adjectives used when God addresses Abraham in the Torah. Take your son, your only son, your beloved son, Isaac. So the Midrash says, well, what's up with all these descriptors? You could have just said Isaac in the first place. So now we got the answer, because at each word, Abraham asks a clarifying question, hoping to delay, perhaps even find an out for this instruction. And what of the second part of our Midrash, where Abraham tells Isaac what is going on? What is the textual opening this vulnerable and heartfelt conversation between Abraham and Isaac is picking up on? Just this weekend, perhaps it was at Porch Fest, that someone showed me one of their favorite comics about the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. I'm sure you're sitting here, so you can remind me later. It's 6 panels of Abraham and Isaac on top of the mountain, and Isaac asks, "So where's the lamb for the offering?" And Abraham replies, "God will provide, Isaac." And Isaac holds up a finger and clear. Wait, did you say God will provide, comma, Isaac, or provide Isaac? Commas are really important. It's a joke, but it's actually the exact question that the Midrash is picking up on. Because in Hebrew, you can translate the sentence, "God will see to the lamb for slaughter, comma, my son." But you could also read it, "God will see to the lamb, the offering is my son." The trope marks, the original grammar of our Torah, even phrases this sentence this way, placing the comma after the lamb and joining the offering and my son together, indicating on multiple levels that there is definitely more to this story. So which one is it? Which story is true? Is it the words within Genesis, troubling and silent? Or is the Midrash true, where Abraham and Isaac are informed, willing participants? And who's the true Abraham? The one whose faith in God requires him to follow an instruction that seems antithetical to what we understand as Jewish values? Or the one who tries to twist out of the commandment and then comes clean to his child? They're both true. Yes, they contradict each other. And yet here we are. We're instructed to hold them both equally valid in our hearts and minds. And that is the nature of Pardes, understanding the multiple layers of meaning within each word of our sacred texts. Our deepest tradition is to take our language and twist it over and over. It is our acceptance and rejection all at once, equally valid. It is holding conflicting views side by side, arguing over what is right, and then accepting our differences and moving forwards. Let's go back to our 4 rabbis in the garden. Rabbi Akiva worried that his friends would arrive in an unknown world and accept what their eyes saw at first. That even though their fear of drowning in endless water was not a lie, for again, they would definitely believe they are in danger, it would still be false and they would face consequences for their immediate assumptions. We do not accept for fact our first reading. We must stay open to exploration. We must delve deeper, holding possible truth at many different levels. The essence of Judaism is that we honestly do not know exactly what God wants from us. The entire point of the divine is that God is beyond human conception, that all of our writing and art and poetry, all of this are attempts to connect with a source that is unknowable to the human mind. Judaism requires understanding that there are layers we cannot see and leaving ourselves open to the possibility of a new or different understanding now and again in the future. 2 of the most well-known rabbis in Talmud are Hillel and Shammai, and they argued against each other in almost every single matter you could imagine. We read in Eruvin, another tractate in Talmud, that for 3 years, the houses of Hillel and Shammai argued, saying the law is like us, and the other saying, no, the law is like us. Finally, sick of the argument, a voice from heaven comes down to say, both these and these are the words of the living God. You're both right. They're both right, even though they contradict each other. There are obviously some follow-up questions like, how's it possible for them both to be right? The Tosafists, descendants of Rashi in France that were writing in the 12th and 13th centuries, they answered it this way. They said that they resolved it by noting that when Moses went up to the heights to receive Torah, it was shown to him 49 reasons why something is permissible and 49 reasons why it is forbidden. We've been doing this since Moses, guys. He asked the Holy One, blessed be he, about this and was told that this is left to the sages of Israel in every generation, and the ruling will be as they decide. Both Hillel and Shammai spoke truth. Their contradictions can live simultaneously in our minds, but there are actually practical implications, and rulings do need to be given. They're arguing over whether certain things are permitted for use or not. We can have contradictions in our heads, but when it comes to cooking dinner, you kind of need to know what pots and pans you're using. There were 6 cases where the law goes with Shammai and hundreds of cases where the law goes with Hillel. Why? Because those in Hillel's school were kind and gracious. They taught the opinions of Shammai along with their own. Is our behavior the only reason certain arguments are correct in this moment? If Shammai had been nicer, would we be lighting all 8 candles of our menorah on the first night and doing one less every subsequent night, which was another argument that they had, where Hillel obviously won? There are a series of stories about people coming to both Hillel and Shammai interested in converting. The most well-known of these is a man who goes to Shammai and asks him to convert him to Judaism while standing on one foot. Shammai admonishes him, sends him away, because, it was actually a ridiculous and disrespectful command. So the same guy goes to Hillel and he asks the same thing. I'll convert if you can teach me Judaism while standing on one foot. So Hillel responds, he lifts up his foot, love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary. Go and learn. Good job. Less well known is another man who approaches Shammai asking to convert. He asks Shammai, how many Torahs do we have? Shammai says 2, one written and one oral. The man says, I trust you regarding the written one, but not really the oral. Convert me on the condition that you will teach me only the written Torah. And again, Shammai admonishes him and angrily sends him away. Again, pretty fair. So he goes to Hillel with the same request. Convert me, but I only really want to learn the written Torah. That's the real one. Hillel says, okay. The next day, the man comes and Hillel begins teaching him. Teaches him the alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled. The next day, the man comes back for a second lesson and Hillel teaches him the alphabet. Daled, Gimel, Bet, Aleph. The man questions, but yesterday you didn't say that. You said the opposite. What are you talking about? Hillel responds, well, you trusted me yesterday. Trust me today when I tell you how important the oral Torah is as well. Because you can't understand it without, can't understand one without the other. At the conclusion of this series, both converts meet up at Hillel's school and they exchange their experiences. They said Shammai's severity sought to drive us from this world. Hillel's patience brought us under the wings of the divine presence. Yes, the manner in which we argue matters. Our behavior matters. Assuming the best matters. Judaism has always placed language and relationship at the core of who we are. Speaking, arguing, praying, searching, respectfully matters. These are the values that make up our community. Talmud is the example set for all generations, demonstrating that if we are careful and thoughtful with our words, then our actions will follow. Even though Shammai never spoke a lie, his demeanor was harmful because he expected perfection. His stringency was not because he was a bad person. He believed that Jewish law should reflect the ultimate truth as he saw it. He wanted to adhere as strictly as possible to the letter of the law. But that's not really how our world works. We are far from perfection. And holding us up to that standard is not only unhelpful, but it is indeed harmful. We push others away and diminish our own valid statements. We might be speaking truth, but it will land as false because humans cannot see the same world that Shammai did. Hillel, on the other hand, understands that humans cannot live up to impossible standards, and we shouldn't be expected to. Indeed, by leading with an open heart and generous spirit, Hillel is able to create a better world, one person at a time. Hillel ends up moving us closer to the standard that Shammai imagines, while Shammai's behavior moves us farther away. They are both true, but not for us or for our imperfect world. We are living in a dramatically imperfect world, surrounded by uncertainty and fear, more now than I have ever seen. And there are reasons to be angry and hurt. There are reasons to assume that the worst is coming. And yet we have a clear blueprint for times like these. I'm a proponent of traditional Talmud study. It's how my rabbinical school was modeled, and I believe it's actually probably the secret to teaching in the next generation. First of all, it's never an individual process. You have a partner that is your chavruta, your study friend. And together you study, perhaps reading one sentence, perhaps just reading one word, and you'll find disagreements. What does this word really mean? Which translation are you going with? What are the assumptions that the rabbis are holding to make this decree? How are the rabbis reading the quotations that they bring? There's so many ways to disagree. And Talmud study helps bring them all out, brings them to the surface. Eventually, you'll get to an actual disagreement in the text. And once again, you and your partner can discuss or argue over the meaning, sometimes bringing our own life experiences into our text. It is through these differences that new meaning arises, multiple meanings perhaps. And then eventually you go and you meet with your teacher who often tells you that you're both totally wrong. And this is what the text is pointing to. But actually, now that I think about it, you've given a really interesting interpretation. And now we'll spend the next hour of class thinking about whether or not this is valid as well. Different people search for different commentators from different moments in our history because they want to see what someone in that period of time understood about the laws. In times of prosperity, what were the commentators saying? In times of persecution, what were the commentators saying? We find who we need to hear and we listen to their take. We listen to their wisdom. We listen to their Torah. Our tradition teaches us that none of the arguments listed above conflict with basic values of Judaism, though. We know what it is to be a Talmud Jew. That's who we are. We struggle, we search, we look for meaning and direction within certain parameters, because nothing in the Talmud conflicts with basic values of Judaism. Treat the stranger well, for you are strangers in a strange land. Support the poor and widowed. Provide food for all who need it. Work towards an economy based on fairness, where bribery is hated and judges have no personal stake in their cases. Scorn those who bear false witness knowingly. Scorn those who lie. Scorn those who deceive. Our tradition teaches us that core values are undisputed. It is society's responsibility to care for one another. It is a leader's duty to provide for all of their people, not just those who can afford certain things. The arguments that we can have are over how to do those things. How do we care for each other? What systems will provide the most care with the least abuse? How do we ensure that our judges are not compromised? These are the open questions for over 3,000 years. Most of all, our tradition warns us, do not fall to extremes. For what is an extreme but the certainty of truth? When one human or group of humans knows that they are correct 100%, and not only will not engage with another opinion, but actively ridicules it. If you cannot engage respectfully in a dialogue, if your belief is counter to core Jewish values, you have fallen to idolatry, the belief that a human can know what God wants of us for sure. And it is this idolatrous behavior that we do indeed fall for time and time again. Again, the entire books of the prophets is just us falling again and again to the ways of our neighbors, committing to idolatry over the Lord. Because we want to know for sure. Right? We want clear answers. We want to believe when someone tells us that they will give us what we want and need as long as certain others are excluded. Yes, we must take care of our community, but never at the expense of who we are. God places before us life and death, blessing and curse. At every moment of possible decision, we are asked to choose life. Shana Tova.